If you're intending to drive here in Paraguay or anywhere else in Central or South America, it's a safe bet that you're going to have pretty regular interactions with the police. Whether you like it or not, it's just a part of life when driving on the roads here. And it's something that we just have to get our heads around. Unfortunately, this video will be too late for some people. Even in the last few days, I've heard of situations where people have been pulled up and situations have happened that have cost them in ways that it shouldn't have. So this video is probably late on the scene. G'day, buddy. How are you? Muy bien? But if it's any consolation, I'd just like to say that I've had my share of police interactions, and let's just say that it has cost me a bit of money over the time that we've been here. But thankfully, it's kind of leveled itself out, and I've worked out, I think, a fairly decent strategy to at least minimise any pain that I might feel. So I thought I'd share that with you. And even if you have been in Paraguay for a while, I think that the first point that I might share on this video might be news to some people. If it's not, well, you're smarter than I am, because I've only just recently found this thing, and I wish you had shared it with me sooner, because I think that it's worthwhile knowing. And just one other thing before I get into that is, when we're talking about police interaction here, they're pulling you over at the side of the road, but they're not generally intercepting you. Here in Paraguay, I haven't seen a car intercepted. It's always at road stops, and they're at pretty regular locations. If I'm going somewhere, I know where the road stops are. They're generally not a surprise, although they do have sometimes random stops. But it's not generally a big surprise when you are going past these stops, and there's a pretty good chance that you might get pulled over. I personally don't mind that in comparison to the places that I previously lived. I'd rather get pulled over and at least have to deal with the situation there and then than to get home from work and find a infringement in the mail that's come from a snappy little camera that was hidden somewhere in the bush, that makes me realise that I have to sell a kidney or remortgage my house to pay. That's not so much an issue here. Some of the fines do get up there, but thankfully it's nothing even close to what you might be used to in places that I've previously resided. So I think that we just need to keep things in context and accept that even though it's not particularly the most pleasant thing to be pulled over by the police, at least you know what you're in for, and there's no nasty surprises waiting for you in your mailbox several weeks later. Multa is a fine, and thankfully online you can actually find the schedule of multas for traffic offences. I'll leave links in the description below where you can go and download those. We've translated the national roads multas into English. The reason why it's so important to know what the fines are will become apparent a little bit later in the video. Suffice to say, it is a very valuable thing to know what you should be getting fined for a particular offence. If you don't know that, you really have to take the word of whoever you're speaking to. And that might work out in an interesting different ways that perhaps you didn't envisage or desire. It's really important to be forewarned with knowing what the maximum damage can be for a particular infringement if you happen to have been pinged for it. So I'd really encourage you to go and check those out, print them out, have them in your car. Don't rely on just the links, because there's various places here in Paraguay where you won't get internet connection. So it'd be very handy if you get pulled up to be able to pull those out of your glove box and be able to refer to them. And if you are being accused of something, you'd be able to say, well, where is that on the list of fines? Be very handy. The minimum amount of things that you're required to carry by law, that is the reflective triangles. I understand it's a requirement to have 2, a fire extinguisher that isn't out of date. And I've also been told that you need to carry a sheet with you. I understand if someone's injured or worse, that you need to have a sheet. I don't know if that's a finable offence to not have one, but I've been told that it is a requirement, so we carry one just in case. In addition to that, you need all your other bits and bobs. You want your car to be roadworthy, and you want to be wearing your seatbelt, all the normal things that you would do in the place that you've previously come from. It just makes good sense to keep your car in decent nick so that you're not going to get undue attention. Before you get mobile, make sure that you put your headlights on. This is the biggest thing that attracts attention. If your headlights aren't on here, you will get pulled over if you pass a road stop and there's someone flagging people. It's happened to me twice. And unfortunately, the second time, I actually had my headlights on, but one of them were a bit dim and I got pinged for that. So not only do you have to have your headlights on, you must have them in decent condition so that they're both the same illumination. It's just a requirement here any time of the day or night. I personally don't mind it. When I first came here, I thought it was a bit crazy, but with everything whizzing around, particularly the motorbikes and everything screaming around, I think any chance to see things a little bit better day or night is a decent thing. So I've come to embrace it. But just make sure that you do that, because if you don't, that's a big red light in the form of your headlights that the police will definitely pick up on, and that'll get you pulled over. You're in your car and you've been pulled over. Is take a deep breath and don't panic. It's the worst thing that you can possibly do, because once you panic, you're really in a state that isn't conducive to sorting the situation out. And this is something that we really need to be aware of, because we have a whole lot of preconceptions about what may happen to us when we're pulled up in another country. And we've heard horror stories, we've watched Midnight Express and a whole lot of other movies throughout our formative years that have caused us to form all sorts of irrational thought patterns and presumptions about how things might turn out for us if we have interactions with authorities in another country. The good news is, here in Paraguay, the police are generally reasonable. I've never had any situations that have caused me to be particularly concerned. They are generally reasonable in terms of the way that they deal with you. They may not be the friendliest. They may not ask you to an asado or to have a pilsen with them, but at least they're not really unpleasant like they can be in some countries. So please, if you're coming to Paraguay, just work through the process before it happens of how you're going to react when the police pull you over, and just be cool about it, because it's going to be okay. Paraguayan people are wonderful people, and the police are Paraguayans. Not all of them are the most pleasant people that you might come across in this country, but this country has a spirit and a sense of decency that you won't find in a lot of countries. So just take comfort from that, because I have known people who have been pulled over and really freaked out. And what's transpired from that have been a set of circumstances that were unfortunate and perhaps unnecessary, because when we're freaking out, we're just not in the right headspace to sort things out and think them through and come to an equitable conclusion. Not only that, if we freak out, people can see it. And if you're dealing with someone who's perhaps looking to somehow take advantage of that, well, it's just not good. And you don't need to go there. So just take a deep breath and just know that everything's going to be okay. The worst that can happen is you might get a fine, but if you do, you do. That's not the end of the world. If you are accused of anything and it looks like it's getting to the stage of fining you, always ask for a multa, a written notice. There's no situation that I'm aware of that would require you in a legal sense to pay anything outside of the usual process, which is to get a written notice of the offence. You take that and you drive away, unless there's something to do with the confiscation of your car, but I haven't heard of anything like that. And it hasn't happened to anyone that I know of. I have heard about that happening with motorbikes, but I think that's more to do with dodgy registration processes or such. But when it comes to cars, people generally don't have them confiscated. So the important point here is that if you are accused of an offence, ask for the written multa. I can't overstress that. And what's really useful is that if you are at that stage of proceedings and you do have that notice that we spoke about previously, it can put you in a good position because you're kind of on the same page. You know what they're talking about, you know what offence they're talking about, and you know whether you did it or not. That's a good start. But if you are in a situation, and I won't talk about Paraguay specifically, but in any country, if you're in a situation where the authorities are accusing you of something, you shouldn't just go along with it and accept guilt and just do what they always demand you to do, because that's not the way things roll in any civilised country. And Paraguay is a civilised country. It's got a robust constitution. The government's generally cool. The people are nice. So there's no expectation that you should be treated unfairly or unlawfully. So it just stands to reason that if you were accused of an offence, in this case a traffic offence, a traffic violation, you should always get written confirmation of what they say you've done, and that should have the amount that is payable. Makes good sense, and if you follow this advice, it may lead to some other situations that I'm not going to go too much into, but just to say that this may result in a more amicably agreeable outcome. You might find other ways to solve this situation rather than it being in that written form. Ask for the written multa if you are being accused of an offence. Some people swear by having a dash cam, a camera that is mounted on their dashboard of their car or on their rear vision mirror, and it's often conspicuous and obvious to people who you're speaking to. And I've heard people say that that's had a positive impact on their interactions with officials when being pulled over. I think theoretically it can go either way. Some people can take objection to being on camera, and I suppose it might extend to officials if you're dealing with them, but to my understanding and knowledge, dash cams are acceptable here. They do provide that degree of transparency that perhaps can go well in a situation, but like any scenario when you're dealing with officials and people, it's just important to be discreet, respectful, and not to come across as though you are being overly problematic or bombastic. Everything's a balancing act. You have to decide whether that's the way that you would go or whether you might choose not to. And I think that it can possibly turn out either way, but it is something that I've heard a number of people speak about. They consider that it's a favourable thing to do, just something to think about. So in this video, I haven't spoken about what you should carry in terms of your documentation, and I've covered some of that in a previous video that I've done, and it's really outside of the scope of what I wanted to talk about here. This video is really focused on the person who is going to be driving on a road here in Paraguay or anywhere else in South or Central America. And if these fundamental things are adhered to, I can't think of many situations that should really cause you too much difficulty. At the very most, if you've done something wrong, you're going to get a fine, but at least you're just going to get fined for what you've done, and it's not going to cost you any more. But not infrequently, if you follow these steps, you may find that the situation may be resolved with nothing more than a wave and a goodbye. And that's always what we're aiming for. But if nothing else, I just want to leave people with a level of comfort and assurance. And that comes from being aware of the worst case scenario. Print those documents out, and that'll give you a good head start in that regard. And don't sweat it, because we're not here to be stressed out. Many of us left the countries we did because we were sick of authorities overstepping their marks. Apart from the odd interaction that we have to tolerate when we're driving, otherwise everything's sweet, and we have a very relaxed life here, free of problems associated with governments who have forgotten who they work for. And just one final thing, in regards to those multas that I was talking about, I found two different sources online, one relating to the precinct of Asuncion and the other relating to the national roads. My understanding is the multa list of Asuncion is for the precinct, obviously, of the capital of Asuncion, and the national roads are the main routers. I assume they are for places like Qroo, but I can't guarantee that there aren't other departments that may have their individual schedule of fines, multas. If anyone does know more information about that, or if they're aware of any other fine schedules that might be floating around out there in different parts of the country, please let us know and we can link to those in a description below. And I'm sure there's other suggestions that people will have about how they go about dealing with issues relating to getting pulled over by the police in Paraguay and South America. And as always, that advice is really the gold. It's often the comments and the things that people share as a result of us making videos like this that is really the kernel of good information that you need. I just wish that I had have implemented some of the things that I've spoken to you about in this video. It would have alleviated some financial pain for me, but you live and learn. The good news is, if you're going to get bitten, it's not going to be too bad. It's going to be just a nip, and off you go for another adventure. You're not going to lose the shirt or the farm. You're not going to have to sell a limb or cash in your superannuation, which is always comforting and one of the many benefits of living in a country that has not yet lost its mind. Definitely is something that, if you're not aware of these things, implement them, and I think you'll be very happy with the results. Not if, but when you are pulled over by the police. It's pretty much inevitable, so just get your head around it. So enough said. Until next time, take care. Ciao.